that in TDCS, both electrodes are active. Sometimes one electrode is called the stimulating electrode and the other is called the reference or neutral electrode. This is because we want anodal or cathodal stimulation of a particular part of the brain. And therefore, whether it's anode or cathode, whatever that electrode is that's doing the job that we want it to do, that electrode is called the stimulus electrode. The other electrode is kept at a place where it doesn't do where it doesn't interfere. For example, it may be kept over the right orbit. It may be kept over the orbit where the frontal bone is so thick that current does not penetrate. Or it can be kept over the shoulder. Sometimes the reference or neutral electrode is kept on the contralateral shoulder. Keep in mind that when electrodes for TDCS are kept close together, current is very often shunted not through the brain, but in subcutaneous tissues in the scalp. Similarly, if the reference electrode or the neutral electrode is kept on the shoulder, this current shunting can be increased with less current actually penetrating the skull and stimulating the brain. Now, common treatment parameters of TDCS are very reassuring. Usually, the current that is passed is 1 to 3 milliamperes in amplitude. 1 to 3 milliamperes is such a tiny current that if it passes through your finger or your head or any part of the body, you don't even know that it is passing. This current is continuously passed for roughly 20 to 30 minutes. It is direct current. It passes in only one direction. It's not alternating current where the direction of current changes at a high frequency. Many TDCS devices have a cutoff of 3 milliamperes, sometimes 10 milliamperes, to prevent too high a current being accidentally passed. TDCS sessions are conducted usually twice a day, 5 hours apart, but sometimes once a day on consecutive days. Usually TDCS sessions are conducted on 5 consecutive days in a week for 1 to 2 weeks, but sometimes for up to 1 month or even longer than 1 month. The power source for TDCS is a 9-volt dry or alkaline battery, such as the battery which you use in cordless telephones. There is no connection to the electrical mains, which is a huge source of reassurance to patients and to ethics committees. When patients see, or the ethics committee see a small battery powering a small TDCS device, they feel reassured. If they see a device like an ECT machine which draws electricity from the electrical mains, they feel afraid. So TDCS device using a small battery is reassuring to patients and to ethics committees. Now, what TDCS does is, it's, as I told you, causes either sustained hyperpolarization or sustained reduction in negativity of the resting membrane potential inside the neuron. No action potentials are generated. So what effectively TDCS does is produce tonic facilitation of depolarization or tonic hyperpolarization. This is why it used to be called brain polarization therapy half a century ago. But this sustained facilitation of depolarization or this sustained hyperpolarization results in stimulation or facilitation of stimulation or inhibition of the underlying cortex, causing neuroplasticity changes. Basically, TDCS modulates neural network activity under the stimulus electrodes, causing neuroplasticity changes in the brain. Note that TDCS does not cause excitotoxicity because it does not cause neuronal firing. It only facilitates or inhibits physiological activity of the underlying neurons. There is no local heating effect under the electrodes, and there are no indices of tissue or neuronal damage associated with the use of TDCS. What are the clinical applications of TDCS? So far, I've told you about technical aspects of TDCS. What are the clinical applications? The most important clinical application of TDCS is to treat refractory auditory hallucinations in patients with schizophrenia, and possibly to treat negative symptoms in schizophrenia, possibly to treat depression. There are a lot of other indications also for which TDCS has been trialed, including, for example, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, stroke. There are more than 50 RCTs of TDCS in patients with stroke. TDCS has also been studied in chronic pain syndromes, neuralgia, fibromyalgia, epilepsy, tinnitus, migraine, Parkinson's disease, and even in elderly persons with age-associated cognitive decline in an effort to improve cognition. To my mind, there is only one indication for TDCS in psychiatry or in neuropsychiatry, and that is to treat refractory auditory hallucinations in schizophrenia. For all the remaining indications, the benefits of TDCS are plus or minus. If they are plus, weakly plus. Now, I was probably the first person in the world to treat a patient with TDCS for refractory auditory hallucinations in schizophrenia. I started treating the patient in 2010. And the first case report actually for TDCS in refractory auditory hallucinations was published in the American Journal of Psychiatry 2011. So if I had published, I completed treating my patient and the patient responded, I would have been the first person in the world on record. Unfortunately, I delayed it. I'll come back to that a little later. So this paper, by the way, is available online free, both full text and PDF for download. When treating refractory auditory hallucinations in schizophrenia, the cathode is the important electrode. Basically, we want to inhibit internal speech, which the patient perceives as auditory hallucination. The internal speech is generated from the speech areas. So cathodal stimulation over Wernicke's area, that is midway between T3 and P3 in the 10-20 EEG system. Cathodal stimulation of the left temporoparietal cortex leads to inhibition of the Wernicke's area, leads to an inhibition in the perception of internal speech, leads to an inhibition in the experience of auditory hallucination. How did I get this idea? Previous research had found that low frequency RTMS, which is inhibitory, reduces auditory hallucinations when applied over Wernicke's area. So I had a patient who had been successfully treated with RTMS for refractory auditory hallucinations, and then RTMS was no longer available because of device malfunction, and the patient's hallucinations returned. So I knew that cathodal stimulation inhibits the underlying cortex. So I hypothesized that cathodal stimulation with TDCS over Wernicke's area would do exactly what RTMS does. And it worked in my patient. And so that was the first case of TDCS being applied for for refractory auditory hallucinations in world literature. Now, anodal stimulation stimulates the underlying cortex. So in schizophrenia patients, we can apply the anode over the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That's between F3 and FP1. The purpose is to activate the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, leading to an improvement in executive functions. The executive cognitive functions depend upon the prefrontal cortex, particularly the left prefrontal cortex. So anodal stimulation could perhaps reduce negative symptoms and improve cognition in patients with schizophrenia. How did I get this idea? Because meta-analysis has shown that high-frequency RTMS improves negative symptoms in schizophrenia. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the 10-20 system, 10-20 stands for 10% and 20%. This is the Nasion and this is the Enion. And the distance between the Nasion and the Enion going in the sagittal plane over the scalp is measured in units of 10% and 20%. So you get, for example, FP1, FZ, CZ, PZ. That's in the center. That's in the midline, right? And you have, the left side is represented by odd numbers, like 1, 3, 7, and so on. The right side is represented by even numbers, 2, 4, 8, and so on. So FP stands for frontoparietal, F is frontal, C is central, P is parietal, O is occipital. So this is the ear. The reference electrodes sometimes are connected to the ear. A1 is left side and A2 is the right side. So if you want to apply the cathode between F3 and P3, or between T3 and P3 for refractory auditory hallucinations, this is where the cathode should be located, over the ear and slightly behind the ear on the left-hand side. So if you're treating refractory auditory hallucinations in schizophrenia, the cathode should be between T3 and P3, that is above the left ear, maybe 5 centimeters above the left ear, and maybe a few centimeters to the right, between T3 and P3. The anode would be placed usually in the region of F3, that is somewhere in this region, or again on the left side. Please note that when you're keeping electrodes both on the left side, there's a lot of current which passes between the electrodes through subcutaneous tissue, directly like this. So you must be careful when using saline-soaked electrodes that there is no saline bridge that forms between the electrodes. That is, saline does not link the anode which is placed here and the cathode which is placed here. If there's a saline bridge which is formed, all the current will quickly flow through the saline bridge and nothing will go inside the scalp. So this is the same 10-20 system with the electrodes marked for the left and the right side. So as I told you, the first case report was published in the American Journal of Psychiatry 2011. Subsequently, a randomized controlled trial was published in the American Journal of Psychiatry 2012, showing that TDCS produces significant reduction in auditory hallucinations. 40% of patients treated with TDCS showed a response, defined as at least 50% reduction in hallucination ratings. Negative symptoms also improved, but negative symptoms improved by only 12%. So you can see basically TDCS produces substantial improvement in auditory hallucinations, but only a very small improvement in negative symptoms. So this is the patient whom I was treating from 2010 onwards. By 2013, I had treated this patient for 3 years continuously with 1 to 2 sessions per day on a domiciliary basis. The patient's brother was a dentist. I trained him in the administration of TDCS. So he and his father together administered TDCS to the girl who was around 18 years to 20 years old at that time. And she was refractory to clozapine, to all antipsychotics, refractory even to clozapine. She had continuous auditory hallucinations in schizophrenia. They were disabling. She was not able to do any work. She was not even able to talk normally because of the continuous auditory hallucinations. TDCS worked in her like magic. She got her life back with TDCS. The paper was published in Journal of ECT. She continued treatment for more than 6 years, after which the hallucinations for all practical purposes stopped. I'm still following her up now. She does not need TDCS. After 6 years of treatment with TDCS, she has her hallucinations have about 90% remitted. Now, there are meta-analyses that have been published on the efficacy of TDCS for refractory auditory hallucinations. 16 RCTs have been published. TDCS is superior to sham TDS, but the effect size is only in the region of 1/3 of a standard deviation, which means that on average, TDCS produces only a small improvement in patients. It doesn't work in everybody. And in those patients in whom it works, it produces a small improvement. However, even a small improvement is better than no improvement at all, particularly for refractory auditory hallucinations, patients who do not respond to antipsychotics, do not respond to clozapine, and for whom rTMS is either inaccessible or unaffordable. In our studies, we have also found TDCS effective in alcoholic hallucinosis. These are papers where I was a co-author and a paper published from NIMHANS. Another important indication for TDCS is in the treatment of depression. The anode is usually placed over the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex because in depression, we want to activate the patient, and the left dorsal prefrontal cortex is responsible for negative symptoms, responsible for impaired cognition. So by stimulating the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, hopefully we are improving depression. Where should the cathode be placed? Perhaps inhibiting the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex can help, because the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex sends inhibitory connections to the left side. So if we inhibit the right side, it may further improve left side functioning, or the cathode, which is inhibitory, can be placed over the right orbit where it does not interfere with anything. Now, there was an early positive study published about 15 years ago in 10 patients with major depressive disorder. True stimulation was superior to sham stimulation. However, afterwards, a meta-analysis of 27 RCTs found that even though TDCS was superior to sham TDCS, the effect size was small. An effect size of 0.3 to 0.5 is considered to be small. And TDCS patients did not have higher response and remission rates than sham TDCS patients. What this means is that you might have a statistically significant reduction in depression ratings, but it is not clinically significant if response and remission are not improved. This is from a meta-analysis which was published a few months ago. Adverse outcomes, TDCS does not cause hypomania, although occasional cases have been reported. By and large, in the RCTs, hypomania has not been reported. TDCS is very well tolerated. Treatment dropout is no different between TDCS and sham TDCS groups. So what is my take on TDCS for depression? I would not recommend the use of TDCS for depression unless, for example, there is no other treatment that is possible. For example, the patient is a woman who is pregnant. You don't want to give her antidepressant drugs. For whatever reason, ECT is not possible. Or maybe the patient is very old and antidepressant drugs are causing problems. So please excuse me. So maybe antidepressants are causing problems. Maybe there is medication intolerance. Perhaps in these patients, TDCS may be considered, but not in other patients. It is possible that higher currents, it is possible that smaller or more focused electrodes, it is possible that twice daily sessions, treatment for continuous treatment for a month, these may be helpful, but this is difficult to do in clinical practice because it's hard to get a patient coming, for example, every day for a month and staying in the hospital for, for the whole day to receive 2 TDCS sessions 5 hours apart. So probably TDCS does not have much of a role in treating patients with depression. Another huge indication for TDCS has been for the treatment of stroke. By the way, my experience also has been poor in treating depressed patients with TDCS. What about stroke? There's a large volume of literature, maybe something like 50 randomized controlled studies which have been conducted, and another 1 or 2 dozen studies which are currently ongoing across the world. Most of these studies were conducted in patients with chronic stroke. Most of the studies addressed motor weakness, especially upper limb weakness. Some studies looked to see whether cathodal stimulation reduces plasticity. Some studies looked to see whether TDCS reduces dysphagia, whether TDCS improves aphasia, and very few studies examine cognition. Now in stroke, particularly if we are giving TDCS for motor stroke to improve motor functioning, the anode should be placed over the ipsilesional cortex, that is over the motor area on the side which has been affected by stroke. For example, if M is the motor area, if the patient has had a left-sided stroke, you place the anode over M1. If the patient has had a right-sided stroke, you place the anode over M2. The cathode is placed on the motor cortex on the opposite side, that is over the contralesional cortex. This is because, as I told you before, the opposite hemisphere sends inhibitory fibers to the ipsilateral hemisphere. However, if we are treating spasticity, the cathode should be placed over the motor area of the affected side to inhibit the motor area and to reduce spasticity. So TDCS general results have been TDCS produces an improvement in power, which is good. TDCS reduces spasticity, which is good. TDCS improves dysphagia, aphasia, which is good. It improves cognition, it improves activities of daily living. What is not clear is whether statistically significant findings in a group observed from an RCT are sufficiently large to be discerned in an individual patient. So what this means is that if there's 5% improvement in, let's say, motor power in every patient, that 5% improvement will not be perceived by the patient. But if you do statistical analysis in an RCT with, say, 50 patients receiving true and 50 patients receiving sham, those 50 patients, each with 5% improvement, would give the study sufficient power to show that TDCS is superior to sham TDCS. So this is another way of saying the effect size is sufficiently large to be detected as a statistically significant finding in a clinical trial, but it is not large enough for a patient to detect it as improvement. So do I recommend TDCS for patients with stroke? We have just finished a large RCT with 60 patients in stroke, and we found that TDCS delivered twice a day for 2 weeks was not effective. However, meta-analysis suggests efficacy, and my personal belief is that TDCS is not going to help. But if there's a patient with stroke and the patient is desperate, then there's no harm in trying TDCS twice a day, 5 hours apart for 2 weeks, 5 sessions a week for 2 weeks. There's no harm in trying. If there is benefit, TDCS can even be given for 1 month. So there's a meta-analysis which has shown a small effect size for improvement in upper limb motor functioning. TDCS versus baseline, small improvement. TDCS versus sham TDCS, small improvement. In a more recent meta-analysis in 2016, 32 randomized controlled trials, the effect size was even smaller, and the effect size confidence interval was very close to zero at the end of follow-up. Activities of daily living outcomes no longer significant when only RCTs with good methodology were meta-analyzed. Again, discouraging results. So I'll skip this. Some studies have shown that TDCS produces an improvement in dysphagia. Some studies have shown that TDCS produces a reduction in aphasia as well. Some studies, including in a meta-analysis, have shown that there is modest improvement in spinal cord injury medication refractory pain. Meta-analysis shows, however, that the benefits are lost at follow-up and that there are no psychosocial benefits. The most recent meta-analyses have found negative results for TDCS for neuropathic pain. Some studies may show that cathodal stimulation over the ipsilateral cortex can improve focal epilepsy outcomes. But in patients with primary generalized seizures, TDCS is not helpful. TDCS has been found in a meta-analysis to reduce only distress associated with tinnitus. TDCS does not improve the loudness of tinnitus. The inconsistent results are probably related to the site of stimulation. It would make more sense for cathodal stimulation over speech and auditory cortex than for anodal stimulation over the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex to improve mood. TDCS has been shown to improve cognition in the elderly. For example, in a meta-analysis with 25 RCTs, the effect size was medium. That is, TDCS improved cognition by about half a standard deviation. The benefits were observed across a wide range of cognitive tasks despite different electrode locations. Now, the problem is that all these studies were laboratory studies. That is, studies that were conducted using, for example, pen and paper tests or using computerized cognitive tests. We do not know whether there is actually improvement in cognition in everyday life. Also, we do not know whether there is a persistence of benefit. In studies that were conducted in patients with age-related cognitive decline, a meta-analysis conducted a few months ago found that there is no consistent benefit. There is a very wide confidence interval, and the net result is no significant advantage for TDCS in patients with age-associated cognitive decline. TDCS has been studied for childhood and adult ADHD. Temporary benefits are observed with cathodal stimulation over the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Very small benefit, and the benefits do not persist. TDCS has been shown to improve working memory, but not other measures of cognition in healthy subjects. But again, the benefits do not persist. TDCS has been tried in patients with chronic pain syndromes like, say, fibromyalgia, and I mentioned earlier, patients with painful diabetic peripheral neuropathy, spinal cord injury pain, and so on. The benefits are temporary. While the TDCS course is being administered, the benefits do not persist. TDCS has also been studied in patients with migraine, not much benefit. what are the side effects of TDCS? Almost all patients experience some degree of tingling or itching or burning under the electrode. This occurs while the current is being ramped up. If this occurs during a session, it means that the saline underneath the electrode site is drying up, and so saline should be re-injected over the electrode to make sure that the electrode skin interface is good. Otherwise, for all practical purposes, there are no adverse effects with TDCS. Patients don't drop out of TDCS treatment unless they find it inconvenient to come for 5 days a week and spend the whole day for 2 sessions a day, 5 hours apart, spend the whole day in the hospital. Some patients experience nausea if the reference electrode is kept near the ear. This is due to vestibular activation. This is why the reference electrode, unlike, for example, with the EEG, where, for example, we may clip the ear, in TDCS, the reference electrode or the electrode which is not important to us is not kept near the ear. It is kept over the prefrontal. It's kept over the frontal bone above the orbit, or it is kept over the shoulder. TDCS is otherwise almost completely free of adverse effects. TDS has been found to be safe in children and adolescents. I will stop at this point because I've been speaking for about 45 minutes and we are behind time already, and there would be need for question and answers. I have a lot of other slides, but these are technical notes which I use for teaching persons how to administer TDCS in their own setups. These are practical notes about electrode positioning, electrode size, electrode materials, use of saline, warnings about saline bridge, and so on and so forth. So since this is a sensitization program, I will not go on to speak about the practical matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andrade, for a very precise and crisp presentation. I'm sure everyone enjoyed the talk. Now the session is open for questions. People who are online can type their questions. People who are there in person may ask their questions too. Yeah, I'm looking at it. There is one question here. Is there any absolute contraindications for TDCS from Dr. Sanjay Kumar?
There is no absolute contraindication. However, be aware that if a patient has a metal plate in the skull, for example, after a craniotomy, the stimulating electrode should be kept far away from the metal plate. Otherwise, the metal plate will act as a conductor. Now, this means that in some patients, if you want to stimulate the cortex and the cortex is lying underneath the metal plate, you can't use TDCS. It's important to know this because the metal plate can act as a conductor to the extent that the underlying cortex receives a far higher stimulation than is usual when TDCS is placed over bone.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Do psychiatrists require any formal training to do TDCS in their hospital setups?
TDCS is very simple to learn. You don't need accreditation. You take ECT, for example. ECT is more difficult to learn as far as pre-ECT workup, anesthesia protocols, knowledge about calculation of stimulus dose, stimulus parameters, knowledge about electrode positioning, knowledge about how to assess the seizure threshold, etc., is concerned. So ECT requires quite a bit of training. In contrast, TDCS is very easy to learn. In a 2-hour workshop, in a simple 2-hour workshop, hands-on training can be provided, which will enable any treating team to use TDCS safely and successively afterwards.
One more question, sir. You had said regarding wrong placement of electrode, which leads to side effects. Suppose if you keep electrodes in a wrong place, are we legally liable after TDCS?
So, wrong position actually would mean keeping it in a place where TDCS probably does not have any benefit and may increase adverse effects. If you place the electrode over the ear, for example, over the mastoid, the patient may have nausea. It's not anything terrible. If you place TDCS, if you place the TDCS electrode, if you place a cathode in a patient with schizophrenia over the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, cathodic inhibition of the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex will make the patient's cognitive symptoms worse and make the patient's negative symptoms worse. So you see, for TDCS, you can't really do much harm. You can cause a few more adverse effects. You may cause temporary worsening if, because of lack of knowledge, you place the electrode in the wrong place. But you won't cause deterioration or a crisis or a serious adverse event to the extent that the patient will take you to court. So you won't be legally liable. There are no problems. TDCS will not cause any irreversible damage also. So legal liability issues are close to zero.
Any other questions? There is one question from Dr. Gauri Devi. Any trials on persistent delusions in spite of different antipsychotics?
So with the see, wherever TDCS is used, it is used when we know where to place the anode and where to place the cathode. For example, we know that the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is important for executive functions. And so we want to stimulate it using the anode in patients with schizophrenia to reduce negative symptoms, to improve cognition. Similarly, we want to place the cathode over the temporoparietal junction to reduce awareness of internal speech and hence to reduce refractory auditory hallucinations. But if you take delusions, from which part of the brain do delusions arise? Or which part of the brain should we inhibit with the cathode to reduce delusions? Or which part of the brain should we stimulate with the anode to reduce delusions? We don't have an answer to this. So at the moment, if at all you want to try something, you can try cathodal stimulation of the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex in the expectation that the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is responsible for thinking. Thinking is responsible for delusions. So by inhibiting the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, we can inhibit delusions. But the problem is we may also worsen cognition and increase negative symptoms. There was one meta-analysis though, published earlier this year, which found that TDCS reduced positive symptoms in general in addition to reducing refractory auditory hallucinations. However, that meta-analysis didn't look at delusions specifically. My guess is that TDCS will not benefit patients with delusions.
There's another question. Does ongoing mental activity during stimulation affect the overall response to TDCS?
So, what does a patient do during a 20 or 30-minute session while the current is being passed in TDCS? In most studies, the patient does nothing. The patient simply sits on a chair with the electrodes leading to the TDCS device, which is placed behind the patient so that the patient cannot see whether he is receiving true or sham TDCS. What does the patient do? The patient is doing nothing. So in recent years, KGCS researchers have begun to think that supposing we engage the patient in a task which we want to facilitate by KGCS, then KGCS could perhaps cause neuronal plasticity changes that improve that task. In other words, when that task is being done, the neural circuits for that task are activated, and TDS stimulation at that time can produce neuroplasticity changes that reinforce that neural circuitry activation. This is what is being studied presently. For example, if TDCS is being used to treat stroke, we ask a patient to try and move your fingers or move your hand while the current is being passed for those 20 or 30 minutes. If a patient is being given TDCS to improve cognition or to reduce negative symptoms or to in schizophrenia, we ask a patient to perform cognitive tasks on a computer screen. So yes, to answer your question, current research is examining whether actively engaging the patient with TDCS can improve outcomes while TDCS is being administered.
There are no more questions in the chat box. I think if there are no more questions from the floor, I think I'll close this session. Thank you, Dr. Andrade, once more for a very brilliant lecture. Thank you.
Thank you.